Hey, it's Amir Borman. This is another daily 10 segment of the Talent Tango podcast.
That's what we do.
We do it every day. And it's fun. We like it. So today, what happened in the office is requirements changed. I love it when a hiring manager emails you and goes, requirements are changing. And how long is it going to take to get more candidates for this requirement now? And it's like, oh, I'm going to go to the candidate tree
Bingo.
and I'm going to pluck a few candidates off the candidate tree and I'm going to submit them because obviously 3 point whatever percent unemployment means they're just lined up out the door.
They're ready to go. Yeah, it's
All of them.
it's that age old. Well, where I wanted this yesterday. Well, you just told me yesterday that you wanted something different.
He literally did tell us yesterday. Like for
that's true.
3 weeks we went under the auspices of a single search, right? The requirement. It's like basically going to someone, hey, I want you to build a bridge. I want you to start building the design. But as you pour the concrete, hey, you know what? We changed our mind.
Hold on. Pause.
Yeah, we're gonna change our mind. We're gonna do something. So and it's kind of frustrating because at one point you're like, we can do the the new requirements we can do, but also there's a little small issue in just running with that, right? Well, actually, two. One is go back and set expectations and be like, listen, I mean, you literally just told us about the changes, and now we need to go and incorporate those changes because obviously that's going to disqualify the pipeline we generated.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's even if you have a candidate pool ready to go, it still takes time to reach out to call people depending on, how much the new position pays, the requirements. So I think it's people want what they want. And it can even happen on the recruiter side too, right? You want what you want. You want the resume. Well, I have a life. I have things going on. I just got back from a vacation or whatever the case is. So you can't press for what you want except of maybe trying to set expectations that make sense for both parties involved. So I think it's I want this new requirement or this new person when I was looking for X. The other component that I think is important too is do you really know what you want, right? When Gary Vee, right? I'm a huge Gary Vee fan. He would say changing your mind is a huge strength. And I'm not disagreeing with that per se, but I am just saying when you do change your mind, there is a point of time where you're like, are you sure? Or
No, but
what changed, right?
changing your mind is fine. Everyone's allowed to change their minds, but it does require you to understand. Like, you can't go sit down at a restaurant, order a meal, and then halfway through appetizers go, "Screw it, I've changed my mind. I don't want that
Yeah,
filet
and have the
mignon.
expectation
I
that's going
want
to come
sea
out at the same
bass.
time, right?
Can you change up the order? Sure. We're gonna take the steak off the grill that we've been cooking, the side prep, all the timing for the rest of the table's dishes. We'll just hold all those. Get the sea
Yes,
bass on the
that's
grill.
what I said.
But that's what I want, and that's fine. They will now, so they will do it though. Like a restaurant that's a good restaurant will probably go okay. Begrudgingly, they'll go and
Sure.
fire up and they'll accelerate it. Whether or not your food's gonna be cooked on par as it would at the normal timing, because they're gonna rush it to catch up with the other,
Or they
components
might
of the
have to
meal,
delay it, right? If they want to
or
keep the
delay
quality
it.
the
The other
same.
food might get cold. I mean, there's a whole, or they serve it at the wrong time. So I think it just disrupt. But the expectation has to be as the person who's doing that is it's not in the normal cycle of things that happen. So in the case of this manager, where are you with new candidates? I mean, it's been 24 hours. Give us some time. And then secondly, like, we did produce multiple candidates for the other requirement until you realized that your requirements were off, which basically means you're sitting down at a restaurant, you looked at the menu, you had no clue what you're even in the mood for. So you just staring at the menu and then you're like, well, give me the sample for everything and I'm going to pick the best thing. None of
Yeah.
that stuff works in
Yeah,
real
no.
life.
No, in real life, I think part of our job or anybody that's in a service-based job is to sometimes be a psychologist, right? Put on that shrink hat. And I think at times it's trying to put yourself in the person's shoes. So I get this manager's under the gun, but to his
Severely.
own not defense, I don't know, his own detriment, he changed the game up too, right? So it's like, well, I wanted X and I'm already under the gun. And then, oh shit, that's not good enough. I need to go for something else. So now putting the pressure on us, and I get it, shit rolls downhill is the saying. And I think that's where we, as the service-based organization or even internal folks, I know the finger gets
Just
pointed at
recruiters.
you.
I don't think it matters if it's internal or external. When the hiring manager adjusts the requirement, there are steps that should be followed. There needs to be an understanding of why. And when did you understand that the requirements are flawed,
Right.
right? And then going back to setting expectations, managing the stakeholder that, hey, it is going to take X amount of time. We have to go back. we literally ran a search looking for a certain type of person. Now we need to go look for an entirely different person. It's not like the same pool is applicable. Now, if this person doesn't A, understand, B, might not care, or a combination of both. So in that case, his job is to do the job. But in the case of the hiring manager, I think it's on our shoulders to push back, educate, make sure they fully understand the dynamics that are involved. Because obviously they don't recruit, or maybe when they do, there may be hiring managers that's a different type of candidate they're talking to anyway. In terms of the brokering the conversation.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to now you gotta go back and set expectations, and then it's part of how do you communicate that, right? So you obviously get riled up or you're kind of annoyed or whatever the case is. So kind of my rule of thumb is always to like sit on any form of email, particularly or call when you're
Oops,
kind
too
of
late. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
like,
kidding.
riled up, good emotions or bad emotions, right? I think you want to just kind of take a second and say, okay, this happened. What's the best way to reach out to this person? So then we're all back on the same page. Cause I think uh, it's all about getting to the right solution. So we can, it's just everybody's got to come back to the table, understand the circumstances. So then it's like, are you really straightforward? Are you kind of beat around the bush? I tend to be very straightforward and to the point, just like, hey, this is what's going on. This is how it needs to be. So that's kind of my tack when I get in these situations. But I think articulating the expectations and how you do it is important.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen in everything. I mean, in every facet of life, people change their minds. So I
Sure.
don't see that as being mitigated anytime soon. But I think in our job, and it's different because it's not like it's a every other service, the service ends within a finite period of time. Like, real estate agents probably would relate really well. Maybe, someone who's selling cars would also relate well because until somebody sits down in that car and test drives it and goes, "Oh, well, I really do want a bigger car."
Right.
And then they have to go start a whole new search process and look and go test drive all over. Same thing as homes. And I think it's in this case because it's not like sitting down at a dinner table where it is a 2-hour commitment. You order it, you're done. It's a shorter transaction. With this, there's a whole but also, it's the demand on the market. So I think educating him to look, listen, first of all,
What you
the
were first looking for was really difficult as is.
this is even more difficult, but also there's also constraints which we've explained to him for why this position is gonna be a challenge. And and again, I think if he's not willing to be understanding, that becomes a less desirable search for us to run as
Right, and I
well.
think a very good point here is regardless, you could have and I think the point of this, manager's email to Amir too was like, "Well, should I go get other agencies to work on it?" Fine. They're gonna be in the same predicament. So I think it's understanding internally and externally. It's like, this is not the problem. The problem is not having more recruiters necessarily work a particular position. You are the problem because you don't understand that circumstances change, and again, the market is the one dictating, not individual recruiters or a recruiting team, right? We're not dictating the market. The market is much bigger than any agency or individual recruiter. So it's articulating that to the individual so they get that more hands in the cookie jar isn't always the right solution.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I think he's got pain points he's trying to solve. So I get where he's coming from, his concerns. The pain points are obviously, gotten farther down the line because obviously he needs
Well,
the
more
resource
time has
yesterday.
passed now,
Yeah,
right?
well, it's
So,
partially his own fault because
well, yeah.
he didn't know what he's looking for, so we invested X amount of time up front, and now we're looking at more time to get the right candidate, hopefully to the manager, and that's a consequence of not being sure. Do I want to do I want to have steak or fish at dinner? Like without at least some basic knowledge of the requirements in anything, and this applies
Well,
to
I think
anything. It's
it's
difficult.
this the stakeholder has to be somewhat accountable, right? So I think part
100%.
of a recruiter's job is to also hold that stakeholder they're working with accountable when this type of situation comes up.
All right, people, subscribe. We want to spread this podcast a little bit more, so we need
Come
you guys to
on.
subscribe and get on board. We'll be back tomorrow, otherwise,
Bye.
if you like us or not. Okay, bye.